again everybody, so today I'm back and today I'm going to be doing one of those videos that everyone seems to be doing at this time of year, and that's looking back over 2016 and my reading year and looking ahead at what I want to read, what I want to expand more into, what kind of things I want to be doing in 2017. So before I start looking at specific books I've read and things like that, I wanted to kind of look at how my bookish life had changed over the year of 2016. It's been probably the biggest year of change for me since I left home to go to university 6 years ago now, and it's just been a bit of a crazy year for me. And I know generally the year hasn't been great for the world. I have to say I've not had a bad year. So I started off the year, as everyone knows and as my channel name suggests, as a bookseller working for Waterstones Bookshop in Leeds and then in Harrogate, and then in June I moved to London, woohoo, for a job in publishing, so which is now what I do. I work in a marketing publicity department in a publisher, and it's been such a huge change for me. I'm living with one of my best friends from university who's also happens to be in London. I'm getting to do all the really cool publishing things and meet loads of authors and loads of people in the industry and talk to loads of people about books, and it's really exciting for me that I've wanted to do this for years now, and it's finally happened and paid off, and here I am. I'm in London, in a flat in London with a job in publishing, and I've had a really good year. So looking back at my year of reading in 2016, that's been quite mixed. So I picked a Goodreads target of 75 books, and in the first half of the year that looked super easy. Between commuting to work, I had an hour and a half each day where I would basically sit in the staff room and read. I was really caning through books at a rate of 2 or 3 titles a week, which would have easily blown my 75 book target out of the water. I then moved to London and got distracted by all the lights and all the food places and living with one of my best friends, and it just meant that I have spent a lot less time reading, and I've ended up hitting 66 books this year. Quite a nice round number, I'm happy with that. And it is disappointing not to hit the target, but I think with the move and everything I'm still really happy to have got to that number. Now, even more interesting is when you look at the breakdown of what kind of books I've read. So I did this last year and went through, and there weren't a ton of genres that I'd read, I'll be honest. I was quite narrow in what I'd read. But this year I've really branched that out. So I have read I've read like 17 fiction books, I've read quite a lot of YA, quite a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, but there's lots of new genres that I've not read as much of that are really creeping up there. There's short stories, there's travel books, there's horror, there's kind of self-helpy, smart psychology books which I'd not branched into before, businessy books. There's just a whole new set of avenues that I'd not explored before, which I've really started to dip my toe into, and I'm really pleased about that. So to try and encourage myself to branch out into these new genres, at the start of 2016, I set myself some interesting targets for kind of books to read and how many, etc. And having looked back at it at the end of the year, I have done quite well. So one of the targets was to read 3 classics. I've done that. I've actually read more than 3. I've got like Alice in Wonderland I've read some H.G. Wells, I've read Wuthering Heights again. I've covered the classics. 1 target done. So kind of branching off from the classics target, I wanted to read 3 modern classics. Now, admittedly, this is one of the areas where I've been the worst, and I've kind of not really read many modern classics generally. This year I did read 3, including some Donna Tartt, and I've just really enjoyed expanding what I've kind of covered in that area, and I'm really intrigued to read more of that in the future too. I also wanted to read 3 short story collections, because this is a genre that's really grown in interest for me a lot over the past few years. And again, I've managed that. I've read some sci-fi short stories, some general fiction short stories, and again, really enjoyed that and hope to read more of those in the future too. So that's 3 targets done. It all goes a bit downhill from here. One of the targets was 3 sports books. I read 2, which is double the amount I read in 2015, so I could deal with that, and I enjoyed them both quite a lot. I read Fever Pitch by Nick Hornby and then Living on the Volcano, which is about being a football manager and how that works. They were both really interesting, and again, it's another genre, especially football, I would like to read more of. Didn't quite hit the target, but definitely pleased with what I did read. Now, the last 2 I just failed miserably. I have no excuse, and I'm just going to deal with it. One of them was to read the Mistborn series by Brandon Sanderson. So I read the first book in this series in 2015. I wanted to finish the series this year. Didn't do that. Whoops. And the other one was the C.J. Sansom series of kind of historical Shard-like novels. Again, wanted to read those. Again, didn't even start them. So between those 2, it didn't work very well. But I do have some new targets for 2017, which I really think I can hit. So I've set myself a Goodreads target of 50 books for the year. That's my challenge. I think that's quite reasonable, even with my reading dropping off after moving to London. That's roughly 1 book a week, which I think is definitely achievable, and really excited to see if I can hit it. Beyond that, I've also got 5 targets that I want to hit, and the first one kind of branches out of my failures in 2016, and that's that I want to read 3 series. Now, I know this is quite a big undertaking, so I'm looking at things like trilogies or series of books, but I've just found that recently I've been reading books based on what I've been interested in, not based on having read a book already or liking an author. I've just kind of gone a lot on the blurb, and I do feel like I do miss the investment that you get when you really plough through a series. So this year I'm determined to read 3 series from start to finish, and I'm really excited to give that a go. Now, another of the interesting challenges that I've set with myself is I want to read 3 books about cultures that I've never explored through literature before. So I've made it quite widely known on this channel that I really like books about different cultures, particularly things such as the Far East. I've read books this year on Russia, America, Japan, China, India, kind of really covered the whole spectrum. But next year I want to expand that and carry on reading books from different cultures. There's so many interesting cultures and countries around the world that I've never encountered, and especially not encountered through books, and I'd really like to give that a go. So that's one of my targets. 3 books about cultures I've not read about before. Can be fiction or non-fiction. I'm really excited to see what cultures I can explore from my own home. So the next 3 targets are all genre specific, and they all kind of expand on things that I've read in the past few years. So the first one is to do with history books. So again, I mention it all the time on here. I did a history degree, and then I've now proceeded to do nothing with that and never really read history books. But again, this year I do want to branch that out, and I want to read 3 history books about periods or subjects that I've not encountered before. History is so broad ranging, and I find that I've covered a lot on ancient Rome and not really much else, and I'd quite like to expand that out and read some history books about different subjects. I did that this year with, I read books on Germany, I read general history books, I read books about genocide and that kind of thematic history instead, and I want to carry on doing that and branch out what I've read. I also want to read 3 horror books. So I'm a bit of a wimp. I love a good horror film, as long as there's somebody else there to scream with. And I've never really thought about reading horror books. They've not appealed to me. But this year, I've read a few. I've read some Lovecraft short stories. I've read a book called Hex, which is really interesting, kind of unusual twist on horror. But it's something that I definitely want to explore further. And I'd like to read 3 horror books this year, ideally including some classics, maybe a Stephen King or something like that. But I really just want to give that genre a good go and really crack it. The last target relates to a genre that I've kind of been reading more and more of as time goes on, but I'm really interested to really get stuck in and encourage myself to read a good number this year. So I want to read 5 LGBTQ plus books this year. So over the past few years, I have read increasing amounts of books with LGBTQ plus main characters, but they've primarily been gay characters, usually gay male characters. And I do want to expand that a bit further. I want to read books, whether it's YA or non-fiction or fiction, with characters, transgender characters, lesbian characters, bisexual characters, explore these entirely different viewpoints and entirely different situations that it's really hard. You can't do that in your everyday life. You can't experience all of these cultures. And literature is a really powerful way of doing that. And I'm really intrigued to read more beyond the kind of much more standard gay novels. I want to expand beyond and read about the whole LGBTQ plus spectrum, and I'm really excited to see what I can read on that basis. So there we are. They are my targets for 2017. I've kind of learnt from my mistakes in 2016 and not set myself specific books to read, but kind of more interesting themes that I think I'm going to really enjoy reading, that I think I will quite naturally do through my reading as well, but that will encourage me to pick up things I might not have done otherwise. So I'm really intrigued to hear if you've got any suggestions for books that I should read that fit with those subjects. I know especially LGBTQ plus books, there's so much love for on BookTube, and so many people have got so many suggestions of amazing books with really interesting viewpoints that I could read, and I'd love to hear what you think about that. But also beyond that subject, for any of my targets, I'd love to hear what kind of books you think I should be reading this year. Now, for anyone that's interested, I am going to leave in the description a full list of the books I read in 2016. It's really interesting reading, actually. I think it's quite interesting to see how it breaks down into different genres, and it's something that I find quite therapeutic to do and look over, and it really triggers things I've forgotten about. So they're all down in the description if you want to know. If there's anything I've read and you want to hear my thoughts on that you can't find in a video or whatever, do just leave in a comment or message me. I'm more than happy to chat to you about those as well. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. My links for Twitter, Goodreads, all the above are in the description down below. And as always, a like and subscribe is super appreciated. I'm really excited for lots of quite interesting new stuff on my channel in 2017. I want to get other people involved. I want to do some collaborations. My housemate's keen to get involved. I'm going to drag her in front of this camera sooner rather than later. But other than that, for now, thank you so much for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll see you soon with my next video.